right. I think we're going to start this thing without Z, and
We got to
she'll.
do what we got to do. She's in protest on Widow's Bay, apparently.
She's jealous that he's the widow and not her. Welcome to this episode of the Prestige Ish Media Podcast. I am your host, Craig Lake, and with me is a co host who's made a pact with blood, feces, and semen before, and episode 7 is not the first time he's heard Get the Harpoon. It's Dan McNair. Dan, how are you this evening?
I'm having serious PTSD from the sea hag because I was married to one for 14 years.
Hiyo. We are still waiting for a Z appearance. Who knows if she will appear? We had a little bit of a gap between our coverage of The Boys and our beginning of House of the Dragon.
Would be it.
And we are wrapping up Euphoria this week. And so around this time, the last couple years, we've done true crime throwbacks. And right now, because the episode's lined up, we're jumping into Widow's Bay. So full disclosure on a couple of things. We're an informal podcast. I think the best review of us was somebody who described us as hearing your friends talk about a show and that our show should be rated higher, much like my Cassie Dick ratings on Euphoria. Our show should also get much higher than a 3. So with that said, but maybe good for anal according to that rating, I think is what she said, and you repeated on the show last week, which is the only reason I remember it because I had to edit it. So with all that said, because we do so many shows, like we're not going to like everything. We hope to create a greater understanding. I was a little iffy on Widow's Bay, and here's what I'll say. I wish it was scarier. It seems like an old style TV show more than a prestigious show, which the one of the creators is her background was on Parks and Rec. And so I think having some of that knowledge like maybe gives you a little bit more insight to how some of the writing's done or what you're seeing, like the writer's sensibilities and the creator's sensibilities in the show. So I'd mentioned that to Dan. Dan just walked into this blindly in the last week. He's got posted with 7 episodes. Doesn't seem like he had the best of times. Any pros and cons? Maybe some positive, but I know you're not loving it.
To start with the pros, to start out on a positive, I like Matthew Rhys and I like Stephen Root.
Okay.
And their dynamic sets up good. And they're both great characters. It seemed like they could carry the show. As far as if this was a show that had a great supporting cast and a lot of other storylines that I cared about a lot, it might carry me through, but I'm not seeing the depth and story. One of the things that I guess I struggle with on this show is like it has comedic elements at times, but it's not really a comedy. And I think if they committed to being a comedy or being a horror, it would work better for me. But because it is somewhere in this gray area in between, I don't know how to feel. And then also, it's a show that it's not dark as in the subject matter, but I don't think you see the sun the entire show. Even when he's swimming, it doesn't feel like it's daylight. So the fact that there's almost like sepia tone to everything that happens, a lot of the action takes place at night, and I'm not a nocturnal person by nature. There's a lot of just getting through some of the different scenes that's work for me, and I find myself losing interest more than I would like to. And so there were parts of this that were a slog. I think if we weren't podcasting it, I'm usually a person that sees things through, but this might have been one that I might have dropped. And that's okay. Different people like different things. Some people out there may really love this show. There's something about it that I can't exactly put my finger on that's not working for me.
And I'm curious how you'll respond to one episode a week. Because once again, like we said, you got 7 at a time. You're definitely a guy that likes to watch some stuff and have some space in between. I specifically, the show length, Lord, like that they're shorter episodes. But when you have to watch them all at once, you may not feel that. When you're watching one a week, it feels a little tighter than it's going to feel having to slog through 7 as well.
Even when I was breaking them off, watching them one by one, a 38-minute episode or something like that felt like an hour to me. Time moves
Yeah.
slow in this universe.
When I do think that sometimes you learn to appreciate things about a show, and I'd like to talk about some of those as we go through. This will be a little bit more of an informal episode than we're used to doing. A lot of times we do instant reactions or review recaps. This is just an open discussion. So the first thing I wanted to do is talk about some of the characters in broad strokes and the characters we like, the characters that are working for us and aren't. So Matthew Rice, as you said, plays Tom Loftus, who is this kind of goofy mayor. What I like is that this is quirky. So in a different way, Only Murders in the Building is a show that as soon as I saw it, I'm like, my older aunt is going to love the show, and just older than me. She's not old to the world. She is, but she isn't. But that was a show that's like different generations and different things. And with this show, like with Matthew Rice, I got a little bit of Monk out of him. I got a little bit of just quirkiness that I thought of my aunt. I thought about Jessica Z. You know him from The Americans. I don't know that I actually love his performance in this show, but I thought people like that might enjoy it. What's your take on him so far?
And this is a very different character than he played in The Americans. And I think he also did Perry Mason, and he did some show that seemed more similar to the horror elements of this with Claire Danes on Netflix. But this is about the most I've seen him be able to put on. It's not exactly a comedic hat, but close to that. And I can appreciate the position of his character doing everything he can to try and make this village thrive up against odds. And it feels like everybody in the town is pulling against him. And in the first episode, I gained an appreciation for his character. And the dynamic with Wick is really one of the main ones in the show. And I also root for Wick. And the what I will say for the show is it even though some of the episodes may seem to drag, the story doesn't stay in them against each other eternally. The characters do pivot and switch and then work together and then adapt. But some of the other relationships, I just didn't find that compelling. The whole thing with him and his son, honestly, I, excuse me, could really care less about.
Yeah, so I don't love the son, to be
Yeah.
clear, and not the best thing, but I am assuming they're trying to bring in an audience that's maybe younger than both of us. And so that's fair enough, not my thing. As far as Stephen Root goes, we talk about Dan's Hall of Fame of unknown actors, but maybe a little bit more known to other people, but wasn't as known to me. And I guess he was Milton on Office Space, which obviously I know that character, and that's just out of left field to me. Milton seemed as old as he is now, then almost to me. But so either aged well or aged poorly back then, depending on how you want to do it and whatever
I
they
guess
did.
he's looking for a stapler on this island somewhere.
Yeah, but I really Wick as a character. I like the contrast to Matthew Rice's character, which is Tom Loftus, the mayor. And to your point, that it's not just them battling each other, that they have this dislike, but then they come together. But then Loftus is always doing dumb shit potentially. And so you get this kind of this is a good example of a push pull, Dan.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a full blown like all is lost and then come back together. It's a literal push pull versus what we get on some other shows. Patricia, not the type of woman in a show that I'm normally attracted to as a character. And I don't mean physical attraction, I just mean magnetically attracted to. I've really liked her. I felt really bad for her. We get a really good set piece of her. We'll talk a little bit more about in episode 4. And I'm actually really enjoying her. I'm assuming you don't, but what's your feedback on her?
I think she's okay, but she's not in my supporting character Hall of Fame. And I think as a supporting character, I like her more, but having an entire episode devoted to her for me was harsh.
And I actually, that's one of my favorite episodes of the season is her episode, for whatever that's worth, just going in. The sheriff, who is Beecher, played by Kevin Carroll, I thought he really, the last two episodes came into his own a bit. I think episode 4, we get him talking to his wife, and I don't really care about that. But both the scene with Evan, where Evan talks about asking him if he can say, like, was it you pig or whatever to impress his friends? And he was like, no, you're not. Just that personality. And then the personality with him and Patricia in episode 7, where he's like, basically, I'm done, get me the out of here kind of thing. I appreciated. And is his wife pregnant? Question mark.
I don't even remember seeing a wife. I heard her on the phone, I think, or the
Yeah, I
radio.
think they've fezzed her so far. Which
Okay.
for those of us not watching Euphoria, Fez's actor died this season, so he's been featured on the phone, but not in person this
One
season.
of my favorite sheriff lines was when Tom asked for a perimeter around the island, and he says, "We have a perimeter. It's called the ocean."
Yeah, no, that's definitely a Dan
And if there
line.
was more of that, like that's like the little morsel that like I sift from the river to find my nugget of gold, but it feels like I do a lot more sifting than gold finding.
Yeah, and all agree that it's a little dry, but it's probably like the point of what you said as far as trying to find that balance. And when you're doing a show, you're doing 10 episodes blind, and you're trying to do something a little bit horror out of genre. I could see being nervous about the comedy, but the comedy is really landing for me when they do it. They're just not they're not maybe peppering enough of it, but I
Well, and I think it happens so scarcely to me that I'm wondering if I'm supposed to laugh. I'm
yeah,
like, that was funny to me, but this isn't the show where,
I
he
think
was just locked in a room in a hotel overnight and haunted the hell out of him. That's not a funny thing, but
yeah, but I think when you take like certain things, they're very so like my best example of this would be in the most recent episode 7. Did you recognize Richard Warren, who had come back to life, the founder of the island? Did you recognize who that was?
no, I did not. I
It
thought the
is
makeup
your
was good, but
it is your boy Dean Cypher from Gen V,
oh,
Hamish Linkletter, and it was almost in episode 7, a little like what we do in Shadows esque in the funny moments. In the moment specifically is when when Mayor Loftus is telling him he can't let him out of the coffin as they're driving him out to his death, and he's like, "Fuck you," and he's like, "Fuck you," and he's like, "Yeah, me too." That whole scene, obviously, that's meant to be over the top funny, and I think even the makeup was meant to be a little. It was both good in some ways, but also becoming more garish and funny. And yeah, I think where I give this show a little bit of rope too. And I want to be clear, I enjoy the show more than I don't. I would give the show above fine. I think a lot of people are rating this really high. I don't know that it deserves that per se, but think of how many shows and how many first seasons and how many first few episodes shows have to find themselves. And so I definitely am giving the show rope throughout the season. I like it more. I episode 5 for me was actually my struggle, which was the mushrooms episode.
okay.
Um,
Yeah, when you know me in a dream sequence or a drugged out delirium, I
that was my
agree.
that was my toughest episode, and started a little slow, wasn't sure, picked up steam, got there, and then I really enjoyed the back end. So we'll see where the season goes, and we can talk about maybe some more of the characters as we get there. So we start with episode 1. The premise is this New York Times writer is coming to the town. At some point, we find out, I think around this episode, the mayor's wife died trying to leave the town. You're not supposed to leave the town. Is that what it is? Or what's the
Well, I think
principle
there's a
here?
couple of hints put out to us at once. We know that the mayor's wife is dead, and then somebody says, "Is it true that people here?"
Yes, I think that's the question he asks, something like
Yeah.
that. And
Um,
so we've, I don't totally understand the concept of the wife, but obviously she tried to leave the island pregnant. And in that process, she was negatively affected. I guess they had to stay or come back. And that's where the son ultimately was born, which is why the son can't leave. Question mark. Is that what we think is at least going on with the son?
Yeah, they have laid out the myth that anybody from the island can't leave the island, and seemingly the son is part of that because there's a struggle between Tom and his son, where the son is raising all sorts of hell and wants to get off the island, but Tom basically won't let him, even though at the same time, Tom, as a city official, doesn't believe this thing. He's still covering both bases to protect his son.
He obviously has seen, he's had whatever experience he had with his wife, which the more we learn, we're led to believe that it is, she died during childbirth, but the further we get into it, it looks like that it more scarred her and she was mentally not the same from whatever her experience was. So in that process, I enjoyed the little town museum. We get to meet, I think it's Jerry, who it turns out was like the childhood love of Wick. We get a little bit of the boat stuff. So to me, right away, I'm getting a little bit of Jaws vibes from Wick. Is it Captain Hooper or Hopper or who's the boat captain?
I haven't seen Jaws in like
But
5 years.
or maybe is it Dennis Hopper? Or I don't know what direction
Roy
I'm going.
Schneider.
But yeah, I think I'm getting a little bit of Jaws vibes. You're getting a little bit of Stephen King from this, I think, which would be
Which there is a
genres.
nod later.
Which one are you specifically referring to?
In the bookmobile, in the Patricia episode with the haunted
Oh,
book.
there is a Stephen book there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stephen King book there.
Now,
Yeah.
and just could you geography lord me for a little bit here? Do they actually say outright where this is and I missed it? I'm just thinking it's off the coast of New England somewhere.
That's what I'm assuming. I thought they said something. The guys coming over from the New York Times, I think they talk about it being the New Hamptons or something like that, or Martha's
The
Vineyard,
new
or
Bar Harbor they mention, and then they compare it to Martha's Vineyard. At one point, Tom says he was born in Massachusetts, making me think this is not Massachusetts, but
it's an island off of there. New England is how I picture it, which I think
okay.
is a fair guess for both of us. And yeah, there's some other interesting things. I'm not sure that I got the words out of my mouth, but the phones don't really work. There's not great reception. So, one, it's obviously a plot convenience, but it could be something that could be cool in today's age. Seeing a modern society with a landline that can't get cell reception is both, yeah, you can roll your eyes, but it's cool too. Like that was a good old time back in the day when we weren't attached to these devices. There's a guy who comes back. Does he come back dead off the ocean or what? Is he crazy? Who comes back?
He's missing for a while, and they want to put the town on lockdown, and he's either in serious condition or dead
Oh, he's in that
until
coma when he comes back, right? Because doesn't he like, isn't his eyes
his
glazed
eye,
over or
you
some
just see the
shit?
whites of his eyes, and it's like he's speaking in tongues when Tom goes near him.
Yeah, so that's generally the first episode, but the town at least gets a good review. Tom gets a win on the board, but Wick is like, you need to sound the alarms, right? That's kind of how we end episode one.
Yeah, that's and again, Tom's trying to build up the town and he doesn't really need any of this stink in this critical moment. And it seems like everybody's working against him. Jerry doing this terrifying history of the town, Wick saying no boats can come or leave. So they're all treating it very severely and it's not helping Tom.
What I do kind of like about the show, and I don't know where it's going to go, but each episode has been like an episode of the week, but it still ties into an overarching narrative. And first week is whatever's going on at sea. We get into the second week, which is the haunted B&B. And so as the town is building up, there's this B&B, and I think it's Wick and the friends are staring down the mirror, and they basically dare him to stay a night at the B&B. Is that generally your understanding of that premise?
Yeah, and it felt kind of like an episode of American Horror Story, which I do, but not to that caliber or quality for me.
Yeah, and so I can understand that, but I think the main things I get out of this episode is I think this is the episode that Wick confronts him on he would pretend to do the ding dong ditch at Wick's house as a kid, but he never did it. And Wick is like, "You're a pussy for not ringing the doorbell." Basically, he thinks he's chicken. Is that what you got from him on that?
Yeah, he is openly challenged, and it takes a stab at his ability to be an effective mayor. And it's almost a double dog dare ya kind of thing.
Yeah, and not my favorite device, but I thought it worked in that, once again, not a super long episode. You end up with the little ghost segment at the hotel, which maybe is a little expected, but they play with that expectation in the next episode, which I think is cool. And I actually like how they, after this episode, start narratively roping and building the episodes after this. Once again, I stumbled a little on five, but I like more than I didn't. So I think episode three, he's supposed to do the swim. We're starting to get groups of tourists there. There's a bachelorette party in town. He meets this woman. That's not bad, I would say. And
We could use more.
yes, I agree. But we do get this weird exchange where every time we see her, the initial hag meeting happens. And so it's, is she the hag the whole episode? He gets scratched by the hag, right? And he ultimately has to go to Wick for advice, or Wick openly just tells him that this is the old sea hag that sits on your face. Or what's your version of this episode?
A lot of marriage flashbacks, obviously not something that I want to see play out in TV. I'm supposed to be watching for fun. But
this this
I think
did
you
remind me of
legislated
your
well.
bachelor party while we're here.
I still have scars from that.
Yes. So yeah, I thought this was a fun episode. It plays with expectations. The swim is very Jaws-esque, and we've got a new character of the week. Anything else for you on this episode?
No, did the sea hag remind you of anybody from your past?
No, the bachelor party. That's what I'm saying. I did everything but throw up in her cooter.
Yeah, but that didn't look quite as ghastly as the sea hag. So, are we really meant to believe that the sea hag and the girl for the party are the same?
No, I think they're different. Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's so she was literally getting turned down, and you see a little bit of that bachelorette party in the next episode. So they play with the timeline a little bit. You're seeing because the trick is that thing. Tom's supposed to show up at the cocktail hour for Patricia. He doesn't
Right, and he
show
likes,
up.
yeah. There is quite a bit that I might have missed, full disclosure.
Yeah, I could
Usually
I
I'm
could
locked
see
into
Zian
these
out of
things,
that.
but
Yeah, so I actually enjoyed that part of it. Is I got you kind of got both pieces, and it made me feel worse for Patricia because certainly the mayor should have been there, and she's thinking this party is going to be a disaster. And then it kind of ties into him and Wick getting her, and then they get by the end of the next episode, they get to where the priest has died at the ding dong bell of hell or whatever that's going on. But that doesn't happen till end of four, beginning of five, but it's all happening concurrently to where we are in this episode. So we go into four, which I'm calling Patricia's Curse. To your point, she's doing a book fair. It's take a book, leave a book, eat a
she's
book.
got like a bookmobile that seems to be just like community service part of the mayor's office or something.
And she's very on cast. She seems crunchy and lame, and but go ahead.
And you should also mention there was, I think it's the first episode, which was probably one of the more fun ones for me, where there's a joke about Patricia's age.
Okay.
And Tom kind of talking about like, who's too old or too young. And it seems to be
Oh,
like,
well, in the second one, it was a big deal when he mentions the woman that he picked up, and she seems to be almost like, was she too young? And almost like she might be interested in him, but that kind of leaves pretty quickly. But there is an interesting dynamic there, to your point, and that was a good point of episode two.
yeah, it seems like it's almost a little bit of a theme woven between them. And you do get, obviously, you can appreciate where Patricia's coming from, like, the bullying girls that you're presented with in this episode, that she's just trying to be a part of. But there's a lot of backstory built into the show. And admittedly, that I was like zoning in and out of it, it felt like there was a whole backstory to their high school years that I had missed and felt like I was struggling to catch up. Like when you're watching the season of The Boys and you don't know who all these Gen V people are, and you're like, wait, I feel like I'm supposed to know that, and I'm slow in the class.
So
So some of that comes into play here.
I don't think they had gone too far into it, but there was just some casual mention of, is it the boogeyman we're ultimately told as the ghosty of the week this week?
Right. And there's
So there
almost
was,
so much lore with this island that's intersprinkled that
and I think I'm just accepting the premise and they're not all giving it to us at once, but generally what I understand, what they do explain this episode was there is this guy who was killing girls when she was in high school. She says she hid from him, and these other girls her age don't believe her. And so she finds this, to your point, like a magic book or a curse book, or in her head, she sees it as a self help book of like how to be the best host and be the best you. And
and
she's
it keeps doing this weird Twilight Zone thing of almost following her around and telling her what to do.
Yeah, and then where it got a little crazy, and I didn't know what was going on when you see her reading, the cop sees her reading like all hours of the night, like you see on the surveillance. You can kind of tell something's wrong, but I didn't know what was wrong until we really get the full reveal. And so seeing her go
All of a
from
sudden she's one of the yellow jackets.
it felt a little yellow jacketsy, and I know it's not exactly consecutive weeks, but in the same week we're covering it, we get two bonfires and on two separate shows in our 6 degrees of prestigious. And the sheriff basically saves all these people from walking into the water, and now they hate her again because they think she did drugged them all, like Misty in our Doom Coming tea, which I think you can still maybe buy on prestigious.com, but I don't know if we have any left. We still do have the debloater tea, but while we're here, no free ads. So yeah, I really like this one. I could see, I get that we're not getting, I would love at the beginning of each episode to get like an open on the lore of whatever that character is. That'd be great. Now it would be 5 minutes longer and whatever, but yeah, I would love to have that, but we don't get it. So I'm just accepting what we are getting. Any other thoughts on 4 from you?
Just that it is made to make you feel a little bit more for Patricia. I don't know if it's sympathy, empathy, pity, take your pick off the platter.
I bought in on it. And full disclosure, I think I'm a little bit, in some ways, socially awkward, but I think everyone feels that way sometimes with groups they don't feel included in. You know what I mean? I think that's a very natural thing to, maybe not in the exact extreme way that she does, but we've all been outside the lines of a clique before, or been new to a group, or felt maybe not to the degree that she is ostracized, but I guess I could feel that a little bit. Anything there for you?
Just some of the other supporting characters that are there at her party. I don't know. I think maybe played differently or written differently, it would be a plus for me. But the guy that's DJing, the woman that's kind of just watching from the shadows and participating, I don't know. They seem such minimal characters that I'm wishing there was more there I could gravitate to.
Yeah, and I'm giving him a little more room in that writer of Parks and Rec, similar mayor dynamic. Will we grow to some of these characters? Some of them I don't think so, but I didn't think I was going to buy into Patricia, and I did buy in after this episode. I was very invested in her, and I am now. And so I will credit that episode. Episode 5 is the mushroom episode, as you mentioned. So I don't know if that's the spooky of the week, or if the spook of the week is whatever's behind whatever's going on in this island. But we get the White Walker mushroom flashback of somebody eating mushrooms on the island, which I think turns out to be Richard Warren, which seems to have led all of this down Bad Road Alley. I did enjoy when Patricia had the mayor on the leash. I did think that was funny when he was just the concept of he's supposed to be at all these meetings and be doing all these things, and he's clearly stoned out of his mind. They didn't go full humor with it. I think they pulled some of those punches, but it still was awkward as hell. This is probably my least favorite episode of the season. What do you have on this one?
I agree. The drug dealer character that okay, so something pivotal happens with the town priest, right?
Yeah, so the end of 4 is Patricia feels like because everything's gone awry that day, but Wick and Tom grab her in the truck and drive to and then that's where
Okay.
they find the body. So we start this episode with the body of sorts of him dying. And I don't know, you'll have to remind me how we get to the drug dealer's place or how, but I think they're trying to
It was
figure
a
out.
number in his phone that they
Okay.
called, and they
Okay.
figure out there's a drug dealer that leads him to this special mushroom. Again, not a big fan of this stuff, but the whole premise of it that didn't necessarily land for me, but it's probably there is like you're supposed to see like, the answers of the universe or something pivotal is supposed to happen to Tom, who mistakenly took this because he's trying to put the town on curfew and get his son taken care of and take all these precautions. And then he winds up going on this drug trip where you're hoping he's going to learn just some critical information if his mind isn't jello at the end of it is the looming threat.
And I don't know what the budget for this show was, and I imagine episode 6 was a big budget zapper for a couple reasons that I'll mention. And I don't know if that's some of the reason we're not getting more, but what I would tell you is why we didn't get anything we didn't know. And also a show, I wouldn't call this a mystery box, but we live in a culture where TV shows like to keep some things close to the vest kind of thing. But what we do get is at the end of the episode, him praying for his son. So while I haven't enjoyed the son stuff, we do get a pretty good coming to a head moment with the son. The son doesn't know he accidentally took mushrooms. So he's thinking his dad's trying to control him while his dad's out being an idiot. But realistically, the dad was not trying to drink the tea, fully bury the lead. He mistakenly ends up drugged. And so that's why it's a little ironic, don't you think? But at the end, so what we learned from Richard Warren, who was the founder of the town, that we get in the flashback the next episode, we get a little more exposition from him in the most recent episode 7. And I do like that they drop these 6 and 7s together for that reason. But what we get at the end is he's praying for his son to keep his son safe because his son is presumably at the mercy of the island or whatever because he was born there. I'm still a little confused how that all shook out. But Richard Warren says later that he thought he was praying to God, but he made his deal with somebody else. And yada, was this the mayor's deal? And he doesn't even know it. You know what I mean? And when he makes that prayer for his son, that's when you hear the bumbling and the stumbling, I think, of the demon or whatever this is. And so we don't get a lot of exposition on it, but I don't know that we don't get an action that's not pivotal at the end. Any thoughts there?
No, I was just hoping that for going through this, there would be an epiphany.
Yeah.
I do want to say on Richard Warren lore, it's a familiar name. And I'm trying to go back through my high school reading of the Scarlet Letter or seeing the Crucible. And I'm like, was that a name in there from New England or anything like that? Turns out there was a Richard Warren on the Mayflower.
Okay. Dick Warren was on there, huh?
Yeah, yeah. Don't think it's any relation, but at least there's some payoff for my quizzical mind.
Or maybe a Warren G reference somewhere coming. Regulators mount up. So, the flashback episode, few things to know. I thought when I saw online, because shocker of the day, I watched right before the podcast as I normally do. But when I saw online earlier this week that Ty West had directed an episode, I thought I was being bullshitting and I didn't want to read too much and get spoiled. But I'm going to guess, Dan, you're not as familiar with Ty West, but he filmed which had Jenna Ortega really early on with her, and then the main character.
She was Triple X. With Vin Diesel, she's the new one.
I think she shows Hoot, Dan, in this
Oh,
movie.
jeez.
It's like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre type deal, but these guys are all going to film a porno out of a van, and then they end up in a property where they're going to film the porn with a super religious family, and it turns weird kind of thing.
Sounds
But
like your kind of movie.
yeah, I here's what I appreciated, and it's where Mia Goth came to fame, and he's got a trilogy with Mia Goth. So it was X, then Pearl, then Maxine. Pearl is really interesting to me, and both films they had a property. It was around COVID, and so they ended up filming back to back in New Zealand. And so he did X, and while he was doing X and seeing Mia Goth perform the role, he cast her in a prequel, and then the same film they filmed the movie on that was all dilapidated, they refix it up and filmed earlier in for the sequel. And so I found the concept of that, for those of you who are new to me and Dan, one of our first things we did together is film a bad film together. And just like it reminds me of that in a renegade independent spirit. And so the fact that he came in and directed this episode, one, don't imagine it was cheap. Two, don't imagine the budget was cheap, because this is a real bottle episode, but an expensive bottle episode. And yeah, so that's a little bit of backstory on Ty West, and big horror director. And so now jumping into this flashback episode, there were parts of it I didn't love. You mentioned American Horror Story. There's like an American Horror Stories, which is like their anthology series. And there's like kind of an
Yeah.
old timey one like this that wasn't really my favorite of the bunch. But I thought this gave some of the backstory of this part of things that maybe you would want. What did you make of this episode?
I thought it was a pretty big shot to take for a new show to do a bottle episode so early, so soon, without really any of your main cast for a majority of it. There was something else we watched recently where that happened, and I actually felt like it worked. This it was so disjointed from the other story just being all flashback that I don't know that I was engrossed as I was supposed to be. And there's a
What
lot of just Puritan 1600, 1700 New England that's you talk about how you don't like spy shows or you don't like kind of like the US Marshal stuff. This is the genre where I might start to check out because it doesn't grab me.
So typically, so when we start talking about genre, so yes, there is that type of genre. I'm guessing you weren't a fan of Salem's Lot.
Not really. And what's funny is I do Stephen King, even though that takes place regionally in the same place, but his town building and story building and character relatability is normally what pulls me through a horror genre, which I tend to not like 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, and I'm sorry not to not be better prepared, but there's a Netflix show. I think it's, what is it? Midnight Mass is a little Salem Lottie, and is a little bit like this. And there was one on Stars that I'm not placing the name of, but it seemed like a pretty direct adaptation of Salem's Lot. And I actually liked both of those quite a bit. And so it made me more open to the Salem's Lot concept. And this is definitely very Salem's Lot coded. And so I have some appreciation there. I think it was an interesting direction, because you don't know who this wife can trust. We get this pastor right away that I was like getting creepy vibes from early, but then you see the husband's out of his mind, and you've got this town of shadowy figures, but it seems like actually for the good. And then you do get this twist at the end where he's, no, you don't understand. And so that was interesting. It doesn't endear you to him, but you're like assuming their kids are going to their death as they're going away from the island, because we don't really know, but we at least understand that's probably not great. And then you come out of this, once again, it's that time gap from the end of the last episode. They're digging up a body, and now it's like they've dug up a body. And so I do think they hook it in enough there that I was like, and especially because they released both at a time this week, it's like, all right, let's go. And I did not know. We're starting to get a little out there. So it's like, would this work in episode 7? And I'm burying the lead a little, but I think it did. Any wrap up on 6 for you coming into 7?
Just that there was that clue with the journal page from the diary and the historical society that led them back through there's talk of a famine or a plague, and they
Yeah.
figure out the last one was like in 1702 or something like that. And they connect the dots well enough that it makes sense in my linear mind.
Yeah, and there was like there's a little bit of the Jebediah Springfield at the Historical Society, and
Happy Whacking Day.
under his that's Sunday's Dan for me now. But under his silver tongue is around
Follow
similar
us for our Euphoria coverage.
under his
DoorDash Craig some tissue.
under his silver. I am out, but it's more cold related. Definitely on the mend now, but have not restocked on the tissue. So yeah, there's this mysterious cylinder scroll, which beginning the next episode, he opens, and so as they're burying him, you're thinking, is he gonna be like alive, and are they gonna go there? And they do, and I think because they did use some of the humor.
With 2 back-to-back episodes with a coffin and a person buried alive, too.
Yeah,
Or
and we mentioned join us for our previous Gen V coverage because it's canceled, but we mentioned, I believe, that we thought Dean Cypher did a pretty good job. I had predicted that someone was inside of him, controlling him with controls or whatever it was. But there were moments that he flashed really good actor. There were some things we felt, but there was something there. And
I think we thought less is more with him.
but I thought I wouldn't want to see a season of this, but one episode of this and a little bit of a less over the top, less funny what we do in the shadows. I thought it was fun for me. What was your take on this episode?
This, so it seems like they'd kind of gotten away from the comedy element for a couple episodes, and it comes back here. And that warmed me up to the episode at least.
When
And
I felt like they found their rhythm a little bit with the comedy better in this episode.
it and what I did appreciate is this is something I haven't really seen on TV. This show is just so different, and it's unsettling, and that's not always good. But here in this episode, like, the caper they go on with the 500-year-old man or whatever, and with a couple laughable moments, this was about as fun as the ride has been since the first episode for me.
Yeah, and once again, for me, the sandwich was episode 5 for me, and so these two together, like 6 was okay. It gave me a little, but then this was like fully brought me back in and bought me back in, and we get a little sea shanty action. I don't hate a shanty, if that's what you call it, and shanties and panties. Let's go. But yeah, I enjoyed it more than I didn't. Once again, the sun stuff isn't landing, but I am curious where it goes from here. I don't think the actor who's playing the sun maybe has the chops to pull this off. But the concept of
I'm sure he's somebody that my daughters just fawn over and that I've never seen because
yeah,
he was like a child star.
I'm sure he could make a girl going through puberty swoon, but unfortunately, neither of us fall in that category. But yeah, I just don't know if he can pull it off. But the concept of his mom being alive when he was born and him finding out through, I would call this girl homeless man's Maud Apatow. I wished this was a role Maud Apatow should have been playing, his crush interest or whatever. But yeah, I'll give them all room to grow. I guess my thing is the show's been getting 9s and 10s. I give this a high 7, and I think it's got potential to be a really good show, and we'll see where it goes. I think it's definitely below that for you, but it reminds me of old TV a little bit in a different way. I do agree it's a new experience, and the pacing and all those things are like different, but I also like that you're getting some episode of the week stuff, but with a drawn through linear thing. In this episode, it wasn't a feature, but we hear about the Kraken and Wick and him kicking his friend into the curve and his love for old Jerry. And the humor of that was pretty funny. So I don't know. I'm very open. I think it'll be a healthier watch for you and also a healthier cover for us the next few weeks to tackle one episode at a time again, thank God, because these batch of episodes are not always the funnest to do, especially in tight windows. Wrap up thoughts on Seven, wrap up thoughts on the experience so far.
So I was wondering because the boat has to go past the buoy basically to kill all old Mr. Warren. And yeah, there's a push pull, and like he kicks Wick off the boat, and then eventually that happens. And then he circles back. And for a moment, I was wondering, okay, I don't know what the rules on this show are. Could he be reanimated? He was bones and dust.
Yeah, we didn't, and we still kind of don't know, but I assume he stayed that way.
Yeah. But so I can't believe that they really broke the curse and that's it and everything's fine
Oh,
now.
yeah, I don't believe that. I'm wondering if the son is somehow a linear descendant of him and that's the last blood. That would be my guess. But it's
But
the
all his kids seem to die going off the boat.
but the mom wouldn't have died, but I don't know how that works. Could she have been? I don't know. A couple quick hitters. She was supposed to poison him with brandy, correct?
It was some sort of drink she was supposed to give him to
I
like
thought it
knock him
was
out.
Brandy, and the closing song was Brandy, You're a Fine Girl. So if I have that
Okay.
wrong, but I thought that was funny.
Which
And
Satan was that?
that was two, Satan two,
Okay.
for those keeping score at home. But yeah, the other thing was, yeah, that's my guess. Is his line has not been distinguished? How I don't know, but that's my read on it. Is somehow his line still exists, and that the sun is probably tied into that line. That would be my guess where we're headed. So yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, because that's the only thing that makes any sense. And you see him a little shaken at the end, too. I guess other things could make sense, but I agree with you. I guess the point of all this is I don't think the curse was broken, but he could have had a kid out there he didn't know about or yada, yada. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I think the best example of Wick and Tom here, though, wrapping up was like, when they go through that whole thing and he's like, don't let him out, and Tom's already let him out. And it's just that
Yeah.
chicken shittery of who Tom
Well, and the
is
way
and
he
what.
played it was really oops.
Yeah, I really love the way that all played out.
So that was fun, but there was also the scary reveal to Tom. No, he's upstairs. He's
Yeah.
alive, and you got to go right and interact with him. So you get this creepy candled bedroom scene, and Patricia keeps like barging in and out. Like, forgot my purse.
Oh yeah, at the beginning, yeah. And then at the end when he's supposed to not let him out on the boat and then he's up there, I think that's the first intro we get to the shanties where he's like, you know this one, Wick or whatever. And yeah, I just a lot of cool stuff here for me. And I know you said it you rounded the corner on its humor, so we'll see. But we've got 8, 9, 10. So 3 weeks left, and we'll be into House of the Dragon. So join us for Euphoria Sunday. Join us for the next few weeks for Widow's Bay. Please rate and review our show. We could use some good ratings. We had one of our highest listened to episodes ever 2 of the last 3 weeks. So thank you guys for tuning in and hope we can pick up some new people. So give us a good review so we can keep doing that as well.
Apparently, we have a Z video.
Oh, hang on. I'll put it to the mic so we can,
Okay.
let's see what her dog and pony show is.
I actually think you got me sick, Craig, for when we recorded. Sorry, that was the tissue that was on my nose.
That's all we got from her, but she claims she didn't read any of the text messages about doing the show tonight. So we'll see if
That's
she ever
funny.
joins
As much
us.
as she loves to text at the most inopportune times, all of her bullshit. She didn't read a text for the last 2 weeks or whatever it was.
Well, we thought it would be a fun way to include her. We know that House of the Dragon is not her thing, and so we are going to save our audience from that. So you have that to look forward to. But we thought it might be a good way to close out the summer with Z, why we give her a few months off, put her on ice. But she put herself on ice. I'm sure we'll maybe see her Sunday, and then who knows when you will see her again.
Apparently, House of the Dragon, the season 3 first episode, starts off with the battle we were supposed to get in season 2.
It should be a banger because it went out like a wet fart last season. So hopefully it doesn't start there.
I feel like I'm getting my hopes up only to get destroyed, but I'm in the middle of season 4 with my rewatch with Sabrina, and it's pure Game of Thrones. And we had all that good stuff with Night of the Seven Kingdoms.
And I like House of the Dragon more than I don't. It just definitely stumbled in season 2. A little like Boys season 4, where you're stretching out a season that didn't need to be stretched out. I think if it would have been
those things where the story is good, but the studio gets in and there's cost cutting measures and dicking with timelines and how many seasons, and they take something that's good and they screw it up through the process of modern TV.
I think 1's underrated, season 1. I think the beginning of 2 was really good, and there were moments of 2 that were good, but it just did not ultimately deliver. So we'll see. I'm excited for 3, though.